Good morning, everybody, and welcome. And I'm really pleased that I can spend half an hour with you this morning to share my experiences and my thoughts in this talk on the topic of how to promote cooperative learning skills through mini projects. But first of all, I would like to try out an activity with you. I'm going to show you an image, and I would like you to think about it for 20 seconds, and then with the person next to you, beside you, in front of you, or behind you, to share what you think is going on in this picture. Okay, with the person next to you, share what you think is happening in this picture. Okay, so you've probably talked about, well, there are two donkeys, and they seem to be working against each other, working in opposite directions, and then gradually coming to a realization that they actually have something in common. They have a common goal. But in order to achieve that common goal, the way we work has to change. And we have to look at how we can work together in order to achieve what we would call a common goal. But it's how. It's not just working together, is it? What does working together mean? In a structured way, in a systematic way, or in a haphazard way. These are kind of skills that actually have to be nurtured and developed over time. Don't come naturally, necessarily. And still we struggle as adults to actually apply these skills in our everyday lives, in our working lives, in our personal lives. So it's an ongoing nurturing and development of skills. So in today's talk, over the next 30 minutes, I would like to explore developing cooperative learning skills in the primary classroom. I have worked as a primary teacher, mainly in Spain, but also in other countries, in France, in the Ukraine. I was also working here in the UK at the beginning of the 1990s. I worked in Japan for a year, but I've done most of my teaching in Spanish schools, private language schools, but also bilingual schools. And I've worked with primary age children from 6 to 11 years of age. And in the last number of years, I've been working as a teacher trainer for Macmillan. So I work very closely with teachers and go in and do observations and do training sessions with them. And with all of this experience, I would like to talk about this process. Not so much the end product, but the actual process and the kinds of procedures that we need to go through and over time in order to develop these skills. So I'd like to look at developing cooperative skills at primary level, thinking of children aged 6 to 11. Consider practical examples. I would like to present to you some practical examples, and I will ask you as well to perhaps come up with some practical examples. Okay? And to demonstrate some mini projects. Now, why do I say mini projects and not project-based learning? Well, in my experience, and particularly in Spain in the last 20 years, and working in schools and working with teenagers, and all the demands of the curriculum, and educational law, where you don't have a lot of choice as to our freedom as to what you can do. Within that context, I have found that mini projects that are short in duration, in time, but can be developed or can be applied regularly in the class. So I'm talking about every couple of weeks to be able to focus in on a particular project that is manageable over a couple of lessons. The feedback I've had from teachers is that project-based learning, unless you have the setup, the structure, and I do know of schools, for example, I'm based in Barcelona, and in Barcelona there is a chain of religious schools called Jesuitas, the Jesuits, and they've completely revolutionized their way of teaching using project-based learning. But it has involved restructuring the building, the classrooms. It's a whole project, and it's a school-wide project. What I'm putting forward here is not a school-wide project, rather an approach that can be incorporated into our classes where we do have certain demands and requirements and constraints on the freedom with which we can work, yeah, in the classroom. So, cooperative learning is not just students working together. It's more than that. I think it's much more systematic. I think it's much more structured. We're talking about small groups and groups of people, children, 3 or 4 in a group, who are different in personality, in style, in abilities, who are not the same. But in this way of working, they do have something very much in common, is that they have a shared goal. They have a task to carry out. They have something to produce as a group and present to the rest of the class. So I'm just taking a quote from Dr. Spencer Kagan, where he talks about that cooperative learning is so much more than putting students into groups, small groups, but that you really have to work very carefully and plan very carefully the way in which they work, how they work. It needs to be very, very well structured, I think, for it to work effectively. And so he talks about having small, heterogeneous groups working together to achieve a common goal. It sounds very nice, doesn't it? But in practice, it is actually quite a lot of work. And you need to bear in mind not just the language that's needed, but also the variety of skills that will be needed to carry out particular tasks within that mini project. But it's a wonderful opportunity because it brings it all together. And the variety of skills that can be applied in that project are quite amazing. And I will show you some examples in a little while. Okay, there's some key elements related to cooperative learning. And I just want to focus on them here. I've given you the first one, interdependence is a key element in cooperative learning. What are the others? I've given you a hint. I've given you participation, interaction, and accountability. Okay, I want to just focus very briefly on these. Interdependence. Children have a role in their small groups. They have a role, they have a responsibility, they have a task, and they're responsible not only for their own learning, but also the learning of other members of the group. So everybody is very much dependent on each other in order to achieve that common goal, the task at the end of this process. As a result, participation needs to be high, doesn't it? We need to aim high. Okay, participation. In an ideal world, everybody would be participating, everybody would know what to do. But then again, we wouldn't be here discussing this subject if it were like that. In real life, it's never like that, is it? And it's certainly not like that amongst adults, so why should we expect it to be so amongst children? These are skills that we will develop gradually. So we're looking for opportunities. We're looking for those moments when we can bring these skills together. We can knit those cooperative, social, human interactive skills with the language skills, bringing it all together. And interaction. Interaction is key. Interaction is key because, for example, if I am responsible not only for my own learning, but also the learning of others, I will be responsible as well in helping the others to achieve the task. I will be responsible for helping them to understand a task. Perhaps I will have the role of investigating an aspect of the topic, which I will then have to share with the rest of the group. So it's a wonderful moment of bringing it all together. Accountability, and as a result, I'm accountable. I can't loaf. I can't sit on the side. But again, we need to nurture that. It's not going to happen straight away, and I know from my own experience, I've had some disasters. I've had classes where, I've had situations where, yes, there are certain children who it's more difficult to bring them in, but it takes time, and it is worth it. I think if we categorize children, say, well, this child is more like this child is, then we are actually limiting, we are lowering the expectations. Let's raise the expectations. Okay, so I've explained what they meant, more or less, but of course, what's the practical application? This is all very well, isn't it? Here we are talking, it's nice and it's very formulaic, and it sits nicely, doesn't it? And it sounds quite convincing. But in actual practice, what does this mean? Topics and ideas for mini projects. I'm going to show you some typical topics that you will find in course books at primary level for what I call lower, middle, and higher primary. Lower primary, I'm referring to Spain, for example. Lower primary refers to 6 to 7-year-olds. Middle primary, 8 to 9-year-olds. And upper primary, 10, 11 years of age. Okay? That's more or less. And these are the topics. So in lower primary, we might be describing people and family, something very simple. Describing people and family. So we learn words to talk about the family, father, mother, sister, brother. I have typical language. I have a brother, I have 2 brothers, I have etc. And I would suggest that there's a wonderful opportunity here for a mini project, even at this elementary level, to create a class family tree, where the children take photographs to school of their family and help to create a family tree, which then is used as a springboard for presenting oneself and one's family and a real world, bringing the real world, the immediate, because at this age group, the real world is very immediate, isn't it? The family, the home, friends. But bringing that into the classroom, bringing the outside world into the classroom. And so, a lovely opportunity to create a class family tree. In middle primary, 8 to 9 years of age, a topic could be natural and man-made environments. And giving directions. We spend our whole lives, my God, the kids, they spend their whole lives learning about directions and how to give directions. And still, even as adults, and I include myself here, I'm hopeless at giving directions. And I sometimes think afterwards, when I've given a direction, my God, that poor person, where have I sent them? Where have they gone? Okay, a treasure map. And this is something I've done in class, and I have seen done, design a treasure map. Okay? And this is done in small groups. And it's quite fun, it's quite engaging, and as a result, it's fun as well and very communicative because you have to create clues in order for the other groups to follow to find the treasure. Okay? And higher primary topics, free time, technology, adventure, designing a video game. I don't mean making it from beginning to end, but designing a video game. What would be the elements that might be focused on here? The story, the characters, what else? The scoring system. Children like.
Prize.
Yes, sorry?
Prize.
Prize. Prizes, badges, scoring systems. Okay? So these are some elements that could be focused on. Quite challenging, but quite motivating. And again, bringing the real world, their real world, into the classroom. And it's not removed from what we're already doing in our language classrooms. I think it fits in quite well. Okay, so why do mini projects? Well, I think they're motivating. I don't think we can do them every week. I don't think most of us, I don't know about your situation, but I know from my own experience, I never had the time to do them on a weekly basis. However, every couple of weeks, I tried to incorporate these into my class, and I've seen teachers do it as well. And it's a wonderful way to sort of then bring it all together, all the learning together. You know, it is systematic, but at the same time, some wonderful gems come out of there. And so many skills are required as you're doing the project. It's not that, okay, stage one, this is what we're doing, but actually there's a lot happening in each stage, and we'll see it with an example later. Okay, the children have to accomplish a shared goal. Okay, they develop cooperative skills. This is what I want to really emphasize. It's related to what I was saying about doing mini projects rather than larger projects, is that mini projects allow you to develop regularly over time these key skills in a very intensive way. Encourage children to share responsibility. Give learners the real world experience application. And that is true for all the levels. And develops a range of life skills. Now, again, back to the classroom. Because after all, after the conference, we'll go back to our classes. What does this mean in terms of a practical application? So I'm going to put it over to you. I'm going to give you some topics. Like I've done earlier, I've divided them into 3 categories. Topics, lower primary, topics, middle primary, and topics, upper primary. And I would like you to think first for about 20 seconds about ideas, and then to form a group of 3 or 4 to share. Okay? What kind of mini project would you do with these topics at this level in primary? So, camping, trips, holidays for the 6 to 7-year-olds, more or less. Mid-primary, animals, natural habitats, visiting places for middle primary, 8 to 9-year-olds. Higher primary, entertainment, describing personality. Is there an opportunity for a mini project here? A mini project with a clear learning outcome. So, for example, design a video game, what I showed you. Yeah? Design a video game. What was the other one? The treasure hunt. Design a treasure hunt for other children to find the treasure, etc. So it needs to be the objective needs to be clear. And I think also the objectives need to be very clear to the children and what's expected of them as well. So if we're talking about them being accountable, being responsible, well, we need to make that explicit and remind them. If we want them to produce a treasure map, well, they need to know, well, that's what exactly they need to do. And it needs to be structured in a certain way. And we'll talk about the structure in a minute. But just some ideas. It's like a brainstorming. What ideas could you come up with for these topics in the different levels of primary? Thinking of the classroom. Remember, 3 or 4. Don't be shy. Turn around. Introduce yourselves if you don't know each other.
You can have canning
Okay. Okay, I'm going to show you. There isn't really a lot of time to be able to get feedback. Yeah, I did hear something about animals.
Animal encyclopedia.
Animal encyclopedia for which level?
The mid-level.
The mid-level. Okay, an animal encyclopedia with certain information about each
group design a page for the encyclopedia. So you can use English like and, so, but, you know. For example, giraffe. A giraffe has a long neck, so
yes.
it can eat things off
exactly.
the tree. So you've got those types of English elements, but then each group are forming pages for the book. And
exactly.
at the end of the week, they've got a book.
Wonderful.
If you've got something that go really fast, they can do more pages.
Wonderful. Lovely idea. Absolutely. Wonderful idea. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to show you some ideas I have here. I'm sorry I can't ask everybody because there really isn't time for that. Make a holiday list. Camping. Or going on a holiday or going on a trip. What I've got children to do is even make a little brochure for their town to encourage children of the same age to come and visit their town. And we've used Google Earth as part of the presentation. Yes, it is possible. Obviously, I know the infrastructure and technical restraints. Everything has to be adapted. You're all working in different contexts and different situations. So ideas need to be taken and then applied to your real situation. Okay, design a zoo or safari park for mid-primary with animals. That's not as easy as it seems because they will need to consider which animals can be beside each other and the habitats that they should live in. So it's actually quite complicated, but it's wonderful in the sense that, for example, I've worked in bilingual situations in schools where the children are studying natural science, for example, in English. So we can take the content from there and apply it in the English classroom. And so we get this cross-curricular approach. And so they see the connections between the different areas of the curriculum. Because often, so traditionally, things have been very segmented. We have a wonderful opportunity here. Okay, create a TV series, not to do the whole thing, but create the script, the characters, the plot, even maybe act out a scene. It's possible as well. Okay, right. But all of these skills need to be nurtured, and they need to be nurtured and structured and systematically developed. And that doesn't happen overnight. And when we're not doing mini projects and we're doing other types of activities in the English language classroom, we can still apply these types of approaches to the activities. And I would just like to very quickly check with you. You will have this in the handout at the end. You don't have it here because I didn't want you to see it. But I'm going to show you a list of activities which are further explained in the handout and you can refer to later. Have you used any of these in your English language classroom to, for example, in a debating situation, or they have to carry out some kind of task? These are strategies or techniques How many of them have you used? Find someone who probably is well known. Four corners.
Find someone.
Yeah? Okay. Just tot up quickly. How many? All of them? Okay, let's just see. 1 to 3? 4 to 6, good work. You obviously, if somebody is 10 plus, well, you're in the wrong room. Sorry about that. No, I don't mean that. That was just a funny comment. But what I'm trying to say is that it doesn't have to be just through mini projects, but that these skills can be developed continuously with other activities. And this is a structured way of doing that. You will see in the handout how the activity works when you look at it later. Okay, I want to show you a project. This is from Give Me 5. It's a level 3, so primary 8. And I just want to focus on this systematic, structured, intensive, gradual development and integration of skills. So in a project like this, you would have an investigation. So there's a learning objective. What is the learning objective? That they have to plan a trip to London and give a presentation. And there are various stages in that presentation. So they need to investigate, find out. But we also would like to know what they already know about London. So often, perhaps, and I'm guilty of this in the past, is of presenting things as a fait accompli without taking into consideration, well, what actually do they know already? And if I know what they know already, then I have a better understanding of where we can go. Okay? So, investigate prior knowledge and topic input. So, they investigate, what do you know about London? What can you see and do there? They work in groups, look at the map of London and make lists. They do some research, and this is bringing the real world into the classroom. Use the internet to find the official web page for each attraction. Okay? And what kind of cooperative skills or elements are being focused on here or developed? Participation, they all have to participate in this. The extent to which they will participate will vary, obviously, because we're talking about a heterogeneous group, not a homogeneous group, but a group of kids who are not necessarily working at the same level all the time, mixed ability. In Spain, we have classes of 25, 30. Try and get 25, 30 working homogeneously on a regular basis. I dare you to do it. But the aim is to work towards that. Accountability. Here, this is important, so there's an element of choice. They have to choose. Each member in the group has to choose one of the attractions and do further investigation, so that then they come back to the home group and they have to teach each other. So there's this sense of accountability, of participation, of responsibility, not just for one's own learning, but for the learning of others. And planning, creating, and presenting, and finally thinking and reflecting. So that there's key stages in the process of doing this mini project, and within that, lots of opportunities for developing these key cooperative skills, interdependence, discussing the questions. Here I'm responsible in my group to explain to the others, why is it a good idea to go to the London Zoo on Sunday? And here there's a lovely opportunity to develop, to bring in that procedural language, that functional language, to try and persuade somebody else that your idea is a good one. Or make a suggestion. Why don't we go too? Do you think it would be a good idea? Well, why don't we do this? How about? and giving reasons. Why? Because, etc. This is developed over time. Now you will say, yes, children will have difficulty with the language. But the language, as at the same time we are developing these skills, we're developing the language. And we're giving them an opportunity in a real context to put the language to use, a real purpose to using the language. And, so I have mapped it out like this in terms of the skills, but remember, this is just an example. And these skills will be appearing at different points in the project, depending on what's going on. But the wonderful way is we're bringing the skills, the key skills, and the language skills, the key life skills and language skills together. Okay? So, other considerations. I just want to briefly go through this. And in particular, I want to focus on the rubric. At the end of the project, you will have seen that children should think about and reflect on the project, how they have done individually and as a group. And rubrics for assessment are a very good way to do that. But of course, they need to know what the learning objectives are. Just as if we expect them to use certain skills, they need to know which skills they're going to use. And providing the scaffolding and support for learning and language learning. I have littered my classes, my classrooms, with language on the board. I've created posters, which actually are generated from the students as reference points for the students as they're doing tasks and mini projects in the classroom. And the most important thing, process is more important than product. And I can't emphasize that enough. And it's a wonderful experience to watch the children develop during that process. Are there any questions? I hope that you have found some ideas, that there's something here for you to reflect on and hopefully apply to your classes. And I wish you all the best with the rest of the school year. And I hope you enjoy the conference. Thank you.